All right, and we are back. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Happy Tuesday, everybody. 1410 ESPN Radio, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. Yesterday, we spent a lot of time talking about, look, as frustrating as the season has been for your Cincinnati Bengals, when you look at who they have to fight to get that final playoff spot, I don't like any of those teams over the Bengals. I don't like the Broncos over the Bengals. I don't like the Colts. The Jets were right there. Obviously, the Chargers, Bengals-Chargers, a big one on Sunday night. But a new team has kind of emerged into those list of teams with their win last night over the Rams, talking about the Miami Dolphins. All right, you have, of course, the Dolphins, who are 3-6, Bengals 4-6, Colts 4-6, and the Broncos at 5-5. I'll throw that to you guys. I mean, you guys being, following this, obviously, as you are as Bengals fans, the bottom line is when you hear the Colts, you don't fear them. The Broncos might be kind of growing on some people, it sounds like. But I don't think anyone believes that the Broncos are better than the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, you can never technically count them out at any moment. Aaron Rodgers can, all of a sudden, everything can click. Sounds like a dumpster fire going on with the Jets, by the way. You have players threatening fans and all this stuff. Wild stuff. But with the win last night, the Dolphins, they have Tua, they have Jalen Waddle, they have Tyreek Hill, they have talent. Where are the Dolphins? How do you stack up the Dolphins in regards to being a threat to your Bengals for that final and 7th playoff spot in the AFC?
Can I answer first?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, 0. I'm not threatened by that team whatsoever. If you can't figure out how to get Tyreek Hill more involved in 3 catches against the defense that's not particularly good, I can't help you. They won last night. Good for them. The Rams, we don't know what the Rams are. I think they're pretty much in lingo with the Bengals. I think they're step by step this season, probably with the Bengals. Expectations, get injured, and then you don't have a very good defense. I think they're similar teams. Saying that, am I scared of the Miami Dolphins? No. I mean, do they have to play in the cold yet? Because that's going to come up real soon, and once they have to play in the cold, it's really over. I think they had a hell of a run. I think that final head injury to Tua, I think it's going to be the one that's probably not going to let him get back to 100%. I think he's going to be a fine quarterback for the remainder of his career. But those conversations of him being top 10, I think that's all out the window. I think we know who Tua is, unfortunately, at this point. This is no knock on Mike McDaniel, who I think is a pretty damn good head coach. I just think they have so much to overcome, and you have to try to trust that Tua, like your whole game plan changes. Tua can't scramble anymore. Tua has to play conservative. He can't take hits. Everything changes when your quarterback is pretty much wrapped in bubble wrap. And that's what they are right now. They're a team wrapped in bubble wrap, and they're just trying to make it to the end of this season. They're going to play it safe. They're going to play it conservative, and that's just not the recipe for success when you have 3 wins on the season halfway in. Good luck to them. The Miami Dolphins were a fun story. I'd imagine really soon they're going to start to rebuild that whole thing.
I agree. I'm not worried about the Dolphins whatsoever. I think one more win, 4-5 instead of 3-6, I would have a completely different tune. But I think that hole's just too deep. We've been talking about trying to get to 10 wins to get into the AFC playoffs. I think a lot of us know that number's realistically closer to 9, maybe even 8. But even with an 8-win number for the Dolphins, they only have 2 games of wiggle room. I mean, they absolutely have to dominate the rest of the schedule, and they have a couple easy games. This conversation is going to get louder in the next 2 weeks because they play the Raiders and the Patriots both at home. They're going to win both of those games, and I think the offense is going to look pretty convincing in both of those games. Yeah. And then they go to Green Bay. And if I know anything about Green Bay in late November, I don't think that's a recipe for success for the Dolphins and Tua Tagovailoa. So I think they're going to lose that one. And then at that point, your hole's too deep to claw out of. Even though, the Bengals have showed their flaws all season long. The Broncos, no one really believes in them to make a long run. The Jets, we know how dysfunctional they are. The Chargers probably have one of those spots locked up. I think the hole's just too deep for them at that point after losing that Packers game. And then, not to mention the last 3 games of the season, or 3 of the last 4 games of the season, you go to Houston, you play the 49ers, and you go to Cleveland. Cleveland's certainly not the warmest on December 29th. So that's not going to be an easy game for them. And then we know the Texans and the Niners are legit teams. I think the Dolphins are going to end up with about 7 wins, maybe 8 wins, but I still don't think that they're going to get into the playoffs or really close. I do think maybe at the end of the season, if they're able to upset some teams, we'll see them on the graphic a lot higher than we expected in the hunt. And Dolphins fans can take some solace in that. That'll be fun to claw back at a 2-win season.
You can screenshot that one.
Well, most fan bases would kill for an in the hunt graphic at the end of the season. So So I do think they can get to that point. I think they'll salvage a relatively respectable season here. I don't necessarily agree with what you said about Tua. I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to be really, really good, at least in those warm weather games like we've seen before. And I think he's going to put up good numbers. They're going to be able to beat some teams and put together a respectable season after the abysmal start, but not the playoffs. The hole's too deep.
So Tua comes back 2 weeks ago or the week before. They put up 27 points against the Bills. And we could all agree. I mean, they lost by 3 to the Buffalo Bills. And, he throws up 230-plus yards, a couple touchdowns. They ran for 150-plus yards, and they have the 7th-ranked defense in the NFL. That's why I can't count them out. I know we're doing a lot of it's cold and all this.
Yeah.
For right now, I just think because, I'm not the Colts. I'm not worried about the Jets. I don't think are fighting back in. I think the Broncos I think that'll even out at some point. If the Dolphins, let's just say the cold doesn't play a factor in this. I don't know if it's a coincidence or not that when the season gets cold, all of a sudden they decline. Yeah. We also saw, you're very low on Tua. I mean, Tua, look at the night and day difference when he's not out there. Everyone thought it was Mike McDaniels that was propping him up. It looks like it was the other way around because when he's back out there, they're a much different animal. I just think when you look at the Dolphins as a whole, from the quarterback to the receivers to the run game and that defense, I think on paper, theoretically, they should be better than the Bengals. But I don't think anyone's going to pick the Dolphins over the Bengals. But if Tua plays the way he's supposed to and he does stay healthy, I do think they're a threat to the Bengals from that perspective. They have 2 with the Jets, as you talked about, the Browns, the Raiders, and the Patriots. Those are 5 winnable games. Can I sit here and say they're going to win all 5 of those games? I don't know, but they're going to be in position to do so. And if they do that, that's 9 wins. We were talking yesterday, what's that magic number for the Bengals to get to?
It's only 8
have
wins.
What's that?
5 more wins is only 8 wins.
Where are they at right now?
3 and 6.
Oh, they're 3 wins. I'm sorry. I thought they were at 4. So 5 more wins is at 8. They would have to
win one of the. That's what I mean. I think if they were 4 and 6, I have a completely different tune.
The Niners, too, don't know who the hell they are.
I think they're starting to hit their stride.
The Christian McCaffrey thing is interesting. But no, Tua, also the health. For me, it's more about the health than it is the talent for you and the cold. It's more health. And we see how, reckless he can be when he's out there. By the way,
that's where I'm saying I don't think they're going to let him be reckless. And if he is reckless, we know what happens when he does that. So I just don't think it's a recipe for success. You have to change your game plan with the idea that this guy literally can't get touched, and that's a hard thing to ask. And we can sit here and talk about the Dolphins winning 5 or 6 games here. There's no way that offense is going to win 5 games.
Why are you so down on that offense?
Huh?
What is wrong with that offense?
What's wrong with it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Tyreek Hill has been nothing. The whole offense has been terrible. I know he's been out.
The offense has been really good with Tua in. I mean, they scored 23 points last night. They scored 27 against the Bills with Tua in. They looked good at the beginning of the season with Tua.
I mean, Tyreek Hill just had 4 catches, 80 yards against the Bills the week before. And I'm not saying you're wrong. Tyreek has been quiet. He hasn't had over 100 yards.
Achan's been great, though.
But I'm with you. That I think for Tyreek has to be Tyreek for them to get back into this and stay in it. But I guess I'm just not seeing what you're seeing, I guess, when it comes to Tua. Because they're night and day different when he's out there.
That's 100% true.
Yeah.
The Dolphins with Tua are a million times better. But when they didn't have Tua, they were scoring 4 points a game, 10 points a game.
Yeah, it was a bit.
It's not even close. I'm just saying that elite level explosive offense, I don't see that anymore. If it happens, then it happens, I guess. And you can rattle off a couple wins against the Raiders and the Patriots, no doubt about it. But I have a hard time believing that's a team that can win 5 more games going forward. I just don't see it. Well, I could be wrong. I can certainly be wrong. But, I mean, New York in the cold, you play Cleveland in the cold, you have the Packers in the cold. I don't know. It's just hard for me to sit here and say that the Dolphins are going to be good down the stretch. I think we'll see what happens going forward into next year. But do you think the Dolphins organization is confident in Tua?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
You think that's still a thing? Okay.
I would be
confident from a ability standpoint. The health standpoint, I think maybe they're kind of questioning now a little bit too, especially with as much guaranteed money.
I don't know that they're questioning it any more than they did when they offered him a contract.
I mean, because I guess he had the same.
It was this. You knew that this was a risk when you just paid him $180 guaranteed $1 million.
Yeah.
I have to feel like they're okay with it. Did you want it to happen this early into the contract? Absolutely not. But I think they knew this was a risk and probably knew it was likely to happen again at some point. So I think they have to be okay with it, at least to some degree, and be willing to rock with him as their quarterback of the future.
Yeah, and we'll keep an eye. Like I said, you're right, Jake. There's going to be a lot of graphics over the next couple of weeks where mathematically they're right there.
Yeah.
They're right in it. And that's going to be a talking point. I just think, I fear, if I was a Bengals fan, I would fear them more than the Colts and even more than the Broncos at this point, even though the Broncos have a 2-game jump on them.
No, I think Broncos are more scary than them as of this moment.
The Broncos at 5-5, they just have given themselves so much room to play with.
Correct.
They have a margin for error.
Like Bo Nix can have 3 games with 2 picks that they lose, and they could still win 9 games and get in. They as long as they compound their mistakes into just 2 or 3 losses instead of spreading them out against the rest of the season, they're going to be fine. I think the Broncos.
The final wild card spot is going to go to a bad team. If we get out in front of that right now, then we can all rationalize it. The Bengals aren't a good team. I think they're better. I think you're more afraid to play the Bengals, as you mentioned,
no question,
than the other teams. But they're not a good team, and neither are the Broncos, and neither are the Dolphins, and neither are the Jets and the Colts. None of those teams are Super Bowl favorites, contenders, whatever word you want to use. But in terms of the Bengals right now, honestly, you just got to take care of business.
Yeah.
You just got to focus on your games, pray you get to 9 wins, and we'll see what happens there.
None of this playoff picture, other teams, remaining schedule, conference record, none of that matters if the Bengals lose games they're not supposed to lose.
Correct.
You got to win your games. And I think that's the thing a lot of Bengals fans are combing over. And that's the good thing about being fans not being on the field is you can look at it.
That's right.
Hopefully the players aren't doing that because the most important thing in the Bengals playoff picture is to win the teams that you play any given Sunday.
That's right.
All right, fair enough. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. Again, the Dolphins making things a little bit more interesting last night with that win over the Rams, something that we'll continue keeping an eye on moving forward. Again, a big win for the Bengals coming up Sunday Night Football. Bengals, Chargers, obviously a lot on the line there. The Bengals have obviously the Chargers coming up, and then who they have after. Why am I drawing a blank? Who the Bengals
Chargers
have?
Bye week,
Steelers.
Chargers bye week Steelers.
Steelers, yeah. Interesting little.
So if you can go 2-1 in the Chargers, the bye week, and the Steelers, I love our chances.